Welcome to the Module 3 overview for Grade 1. Congratulations! By now, both you and your students are most likely at least halfway through the school year. You are probably ready and excited to begin this new area of study. In this third first grade module, students build their literacy and science skills as they engage in an in-depth study of birds. The module focuses on big ideas derived from the next generation science standards. Animals have physical features that help them survive, and animals behave in ways that help them survive. Please note that the work that students do in this module lays the foundation for Module 4, when students will apply this knowledge and build citizenship skills by learning about and protecting the birds in their own community. Please save students' work from this module so that they can refer to it during the next one. As you know, our curriculum is built upon the 4 T's framework: topic, targets, task, and texts. If you need a refresher, review the overview screencast for the K2 module lessons. In this module, students study birds and begin to understand the form and function of various parts of a bird's body. Throughout the module, they participate in whole and small group research to learn more about the body parts of birds and how these parts help them survive in their habitats. All of this learning prepares students for the performance task, in which they create expert bird riddle cards and expert bird scientific drawing cards for a riddle matching game using facts from their research. You most likely remember that the learning targets are derived from language arts standards. In this performance task, students will be explicitly working towards the standard that requires them to focus their writing on a topic, respond to questions and suggestions from peers, and add details to strengthen writing as needed. The performance task also focuses on specific language standards, including the correct use of adjectives, conjunctions, and punctuation and conventional spelling. Throughout this module, many additional standards are addressed and assessed. For a complete list, view the module overview resource on our website or in your printed materials. Students will engage with a variety of texts throughout this module, including Birds from the Scholastic Discover More series and Kevin Henke's Birds. In the third unit, students use Little Kid's First Big Book of Birds to conduct research to complete their performance task. The module overview includes a complete list of all the required and recommended texts for this module. In this module, students build on the learning they did in Module 2 to do more in-depth reading of informational scientific texts. They continue to focus on finding the main topic and retelling key details in informational text, as well as develop content-specific vocabulary. They then write informational text to share their newfound learning. This module also includes an intentional focus on next-generation science, life science standards for Grade 1. Birds are amazing creatures who are able to thrive in very diverse habitats. In this module, students will learn about key features that all birds have in common, and they will be invited to think about how variations in those bird parts help different bird species survive in those particular habitats. As you know, the module is structured as 3 units of study over the course of 8 to 9 weeks. The module begins with close read-alouds of the texts Just Ducks and Birds to answer the unit guiding question, what makes a bird a bird? As students build background knowledge about birds through these texts, they participate in a cycle of reading, talking, and creative representation through role-playing, music, and movement. Students are also provided opportunities to write and create scientific drawings in their birds research notebooks. During Unit 2, students research to learn more about the form and function of 2 key bird parts, beaks and feathers. Students conduct research using 2 key anchor texts, feathers, not just for flying, and beaks. This cycle of research is anchored by the unit guiding question, how do birds use their body parts to survive? Students also continue to hone their scientific drawing skills through the process of close viewing and engage in a series of beak challenges. For the Unit 2 assessment, students show their learning by writing an informational paragraph that describes how beaks or feathers help birds survive. In Unit 3, students participate in another research cycle to learn about how a specific bird's key parts help them to survive in their habitat. Whole class and small group research is anchored by National Geographic Kids' Little Kids' First Big Book of Birds. For the Unit 3 assessment, students participate in a science talk focused on the question, how do specific birds use their body parts to survive? Let's circle back to the targets from the 4 T's. As you may remember, targets are the standards written in student-friendly I can statements. Notice how these targets build over time by examining some of the key learning targets across the 3 units of Module 3. In Unit 1, students launch their learning about birds by researching the different physical characteristics of birds. In addition to reading, students participate in structured conversations to build their learning. As they start to practice documenting their research by creating and labeling observational drawings of various types of birds. In Unit 2, students continue to build their skills as researchers through whole group research about feathers and then small group research about beaks. They work on collaborating with classmates to share and build their learning. And in Unit 3, students study a specific bird to learn about how its key parts help it survive in its habitat. Students also hone their scientific drawing skills through drafting, peer critique, feedback, and revision. The expert bird research and scientific drawing leads to the creation of the performance task, the riddle bird cards, and drawings for a bird matching game. In this module, students work on developing the habits of character they need to become ethical people and effective learners. In Unit 1, students practice showing empathy toward classmates as they are guided through the process of giving kind and specific feedback to a partner that takes into account the feelings of that partner. Throughout Unit 2, students practice the character trait of compassion as they collaborate with classmates during group research. And in Unit 3, the character focuses on perseverance. Students learn to persevere while giving and receiving feedback on their work for the performance task. EL education lesson plans include supports to help all students access the learning. The Supporting English Language Learners section at the beginning of each lesson names the important parts of the lesson, identifying where ELL students may struggle and suggesting options for lighter and heavier support. The Universal Design for Learning section that always immediately follows contains suggestions for additional support in providing students with multiple means of representation, action and expression, and engagement. In addition, throughout every lesson, Meeting Students' Needs sections provide specific strategies for supporting students with a variety of issues, such as fine motor skills, vocabulary development, motivation, planning, and activating prior knowledge. There are several opportunities in the EL education curriculum to extend student learning through community involvement, tapping into experts, or participating in fieldwork or service projects. Students and teachers can put their heads together to come up with amazing opportunities in their local communities. Some possibilities include inviting an ornithologist into the classroom to talk about birds, taking a walk around the neighborhood with a local bird watcher, and creating and installing bird feeders in places around the community. We hope you have enjoyed learning about this module and all the ways that students will engage with the topic of birds. Please be sure to visit our website to access our open-source free curriculum. Check out the tools link at the top of the page for guidance documents, videos, and more. As a reminder, labs are an important feature of the K-2 curriculum because they support and extend student learning from the module lessons. They are designed to help teachers ensure that all of their students get the time to build content knowledge, become immersed in oral language, play and explore, and practice skills and habits of character that they need, both to live joyfully and to be fully successful and proficient. During their lab time, students break up into groups and go to separate work areas. This structure creates a small collaborative atmosphere in which students will work throughout their lab's experience. The overarching intent of the labs is to build student independence. Therefore, labs are structured to gradually transfer responsibility from the teacher to the students over the course of the 6 weeks of lab lessons that comprise a module. In some schools, time to implement labs is limited. In this case, students don't necessarily have to run all 4 labs, and within each lab there is room for flexibility. If you are considering flexing labs, think about whether the work in a particular lab is critical scaffolding for the module performance task, and also whether the students could do something similar in a science, art, or other specialist class. The day-by-day schedule at the end of the lab overview will be a helpful tool for planning the labs. Remember, labs are scheduled to run for only 6 weeks of the 8 to 9 week module, so there's already some built-in flex time in the schedule. Let's take a look at what students will actually be doing in the 4 labs offered in Module 3. In the Create lab, students use a variety of materials and skills to create a realistic 3-dimensional sculpture of a bird. Through a carefully scaffolded sequence, students first learn to sculpt specific parts of a mallard duck, and then transfer their artistic skills as they create a sculpture of a chosen expert bird. In the Explore lab, students learn more about bird bones and beaks as they engage in a series of challenges using materials that simulate these specific parts of birds. In the Imagine lab, students learn more about birds through a study of poetry. Specifically, students practice reading poetry fluently and using movement to represent what they learn about birds and their body parts. In the Engineer lab, students use their knowledge of the function of bird body parts, specifically feathers, beaks, and feet, to design solutions to human problems. The Engineer lab connects to Next Generation Science Standard LS1-1. All organisms have external parts. Different animals use their body parts in different ways to see, hear, grasp objects, protect themselves, move from place to place, and seek, find, and take in food, water, and air. You probably remember that the 1-hour lab time begins each day with 10 minutes of story time, in which students listen to a rich text read aloud. The recommended book list is included in your lab's teacher guide. It names titles that will enhance student understanding of the module content or habits of character. This slide shows just a small portion of the list, and storytime texts do not need to come from this list. Teachers can choose any book that helps students develop knowledge of birds or is about a relevant habit of character. If possible, each lab should have its own space in the classroom where all the materials are stored. If space is limited, each lab could have its own container that students are taught to access and store at the beginning and end of their time in the lab. Your lab's teacher guide will provide a complete list of all the materials you will need to successfully implement labs. Many of the materials are items already found in classrooms and schools. Others can be obtained via parent and community support groups. You can modify labs to use materials that you have in hand, or to incorporate more reading or writing practice. What teachers and students love most about labs is how much fun they are. We wish you lots of joy as you bring the curriculum to life in your classroom.